A women's festival is set to take place in London next week, and there has been a petition against two speakers that were supposed to give a talk. Now, this talk might be canceled as a result of the petition. Why are people so upset about it? Well, it actually features a woman who has been a victim of rape and her rapist. And they actually gave a TED talk about their experience and how they, I guess, were able to talk things through to the point where the rapist took responsibility for his actions. Now, a lot of people are upset about that. They don't think that there should be a platform for this type of talk. Now, Rapist Tom Stranger was due to appear with his victim, Thordis Elva, in the 2017 Women of the World Festival. The two have written a book, South of Forgiveness, about the attack and its impact on their lives. The event had been programmed so one woman could share her journey of coming to terms with the devastating impact of her rape and her decision to invite her perpetrator to take full responsibility for his actions. That's according to Jude Kelly, who is one of the organizers of this event. So before we go further, let me tell you how everything went down during this rape. It took place in 1996, and Tom Stranger was 18 years old and traveling to Iceland for like an exchange program. And that was when he met Thordis Elva. She was 16 years old at the time. And so they got to know each other and actually fell in love. Thordis Elva even said herself, this was the first time I fell in love. They were dating for about a month, and they went to some sort of Christmas event where she drank. She had rum, and a little too much rum. And so at that point, he took her home and proceeded to have sex with her without her consent. And she felt a lot of shame about it. She says, the TED Talk's really interesting, you should watch the whole thing. And she almost felt guilty about it, like she took responsibility for it. And then she didn't realize until later on, like, no, the only person who should take responsibility is the person who had sex with me when I did not consent to it. And so 8 years later, she reached out to him and confronted him about it. And so he has taken complete responsibility for it. She hasn't pressed charges against him or anything like that. But I think it's an interesting conversation because usually in situations like that where they've been dating and they're close in age and there's been alcohol involved, there's usually a lot of excuses that people make for the rapist. And in this case, here's a man who's taking full responsibility. And by the way, all of the proceeds from their book, at least his proceeds, go straight to charity. So he's not doing this for profit or attention. I think he's just really highlighting an interesting issue and giving an interesting perspective.
I'd want to hear it out. I find it interesting, but and it's not like I haven't attended women's events before, so I've got a voice in it too, but I'm not going to this particular festival, so it's obviously their call as to whether they want to hear him out or not. I would have voted yes, because I think that everybody could have learned something from it. What's your take on it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have these conversations about free speech all the time, like the type of people who should be allowed to speak on college campuses. And everyone knows what my stance is. Even if I find the person completely deplorable, I think that they should be allowed to speak, and whoever wants to go see that person speak should be able to do so. In this case, I think that it is an important talk to have, and especially because you get to hear the perspective of someone who has taken responsibility, who is remorseful, who is apologetic. I understand the perspective of women who have been victimized in the past and they feel like this is the type of thing that would trigger them, but this is not something that they have to go to. I think this is a good educational opportunity for people who are interested.
Yeah, look, I don't want to minimize this, so I'm afraid of using this analogy, but I will. If you're going to a festival of any sort, you don't have to pay or even bother to go to attend if you don't want to see the things there. So if you're going to a rock festival and there's rappers, you might say, hey, I vote against the rappers. I don't have anything against the rappers, but I'm going to a rock festival. Yeah. So if you're going to a women's festival and you don't want to see a rapist, I hear you. And you have every right in the world to voice your opinion on that. I would have voted yes, not because I'm interested in seeing, it's the framing on that is unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to demagogue and say, what did I go? You want to see a rapist talk? No, it's a survivor and a victim who's initiating that conversation, and I find it potentially interesting. So I would have voted yes. I think that but then I'm not but I'm not a victim of rape, so maybe it's easier for me to say, right? So, and at the end of the day, they should all decide together which direction they want to go, and it's up to them and not us.
Right. So over 2,000 people have already signed the petition. Apparently, that's enough to make the organizers, waver a little bit on their decision to have them there. But another criticism that I just wanted to quickly bring up is the notion that having a rapist speak at this event normalizes sexual violence. And I actually completely disagree with that. It depends on what the rapist has to say. So if he's up there and he's making excuses for himself and you're providing a platform for that, then yeah, I totally get that point. But in this case, it's not normalizing it. Here's a guy who's like, look, I committed a rape, where a lot of people would actually make excuses for me, but I take full responsibility and I understand what I did was wrong. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I don't think it normalizes it at all. And in fact, there's a good argument to be made that you want to make the case, if you care about this issue, that it happens far too often, and the more of a spotlight you put on it, the more likely it is that we can combat it and have it happen less often. But look, these are fair disagreements. We would have voted yes. 2,000 people have voted no. And it's up to the organizers at the end of the day to decide. It's a much weightier issue than if it's a rock concert.
Right, of course.
And of course, they're going to take those people's feelings into account. But they're going to make that call, and it's on them. As we always say on the show, for us, just hear people out. And it's possible that you will totally disagree, and it's possible that it was a waste of time, or it's possible that you'll learn something. And in this case, it's the conversation between those two people that's what's interesting, not necessarily what he has to say by himself. And he's certainly not excusing it, and she's certainly not excusing it.
Exactly.
So I think I would want to see it. Support independent media and get the whole Young Turks 2-hour show and other network shows all ad-free. TYTnetwork.com/join. Come join us today.